I was wiring money for my mother's heart meds while my sister used the same card to buy vodka and scratch-offs. Then she called me a monster at the funeral. That was the moment everything snapped inside me. But if you really want to understand why I walked away from my family forever, you need to hear how it all began. Before I dive deeper, let me just say this. If you're into true stories about family betrayal and calculated revenge, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. Trust me, what I'm about to tell you will make you question just how far family loyalty should really go. That I grew up in a small town where everybody knew everybody. My mom, Margaret, most folks called her Maggie, was a gentle woman, the kind who'd give her last dollar to help someone. She worked hard, held the family together, and tried to keep peace between me and my sister. My sister Rachel, on the other hand, was the complete opposite of me. Loud, bossy, always acting like she knew more than everyone else in the room. If Rachel wasn't talking, she was drinking. And if she wasn't drinking, she was telling everyone how much smarter she was than the rest of us. Even as kids, the difference was clear. Rachel always wanted the spotlight, and she'd do anything to keep it. I was the quiet one, the one who figured things out, who fixed problems without making a scene. It shaped how we lived our adult lives. She married young, had 2 boys, Ethan and Jacob, and fell into a cycle of blaming the world for her own choices. Her husband Tom, a man with strong arms from labor jobs, but no backbone at home. He never stood up to her. He drank too, though not nearly as heavy as Rachel. Together, they were a storm you never wanted to get caught in. Me? I went the opposite direction. I married Emily, and we had 3 kids, Michael, Sarah, and Lucas. I never wanted to punch a clock for someone else. I hustled, found opportunities, took risks. I worked overseas a lot, building a better future for my family. It wasn't glamorous, but it meant food on the table and a chance to break free from the dead-end life that had swallowed people like my sister. But here's the thing. Working abroad meant distance. And distance can eat at a marriage. Emily started getting used to me being gone, maybe too used to it. I wanted to move her and all 3 kids out of that town, bring them abroad so we could finally have the future I dreamed about. But Emily wasn't ready. She clung to what was familiar, even if it was small and limiting. When I pushed harder, she pushed back. Eventually, she stayed with our youngest while I took the older 2 with me. It was a split I never wanted, but it was the only way forward. Meanwhile, my mom started to get sick. Real sick. And guess who she lived with? Rachel. On the surface, it made sense. Rachel was nearby, and Mom needed someone close. But I should have known better. Rachel saw Mom's illness not as a tragedy, but as a bank account. She started calling me, telling me Mom needed money for meds, for utilities, for groceries. And me, being the dutiful son, I sent it. At first, I didn't question a thing. I wanted to believe I was helping Mom. But then the phone calls got darker. Dan, the power's cut off. Mom's sitting in the cold. Dan, they're threatening to shut off the gas. You need to send something right now. Every week, there was a new emergency, a new reason I had to wire money. And every week, I pushed my own dreams aside just to cover another bill. Still, something didn't add up. I'd call Mom, and she'd sound confused, saying she hadn't even known I sent money. Other times, she'd thank me for paying the hospital directly, but then mention she hadn't had groceries for days. The puzzle pieces didn't fit, until I caught Rachel in a lie so blatant it burned itself into my memory. One night, I checked the card I'd set up specifically for Mom's prescriptions. On the very same day the pharmacy had charged for heart medication, another charge appeared, at a liquor store. Same card, same hour. That was Rachel. She didn't even try to hide it. That was when I started keeping records. Screenshots, receipts, wire transfer logs. I didn't say anything. Not yet. Because if Rachel wanted to play dirty, I was going to make sure I had every ounce of proof stacked against her. And here's the bitter irony. Even after everything I paid for, even after sacrificing years of my life to keep them afloat, when Mom finally passed, Rachel turned to the crowd at the funeral and called me a selfish son, a monster. Like I hadn't been the only one holding this family together with both hands while she drowned herself in bottles and excuses. That was the breaking point. But it wasn't the end. Not by a long shot. When I first left the country for work, I thought I was saving my family. Every long shift, every dangerous sight, every night I fell asleep in a cold room far from home. I told myself it was worth it. Because back home in Michigan, Emily and the kids had food on the table, new shoes for school, and a roof that didn't leak when it rained. But the distance grew heavier than I expected. At first, Emily called me every night. We'd talk about the kids, about what was happening around town, about how she missed me. But those calls became shorter, then skipped, until eventually I was the one dialing over and over, waiting for her to pick up. Sometimes she did. Sometimes she didn't, and I knew something was changing. She started getting used to me being gone. When I came home for short visits, she felt like a stranger in my own bed. Her laugh sounded forced, her eyes tired, her words clipped. One night, after the kids were asleep, I told her my plan straight out. Pack everything. Let's move. All of us. I'll get us settled abroad. The kids will have better schools, better chances. We can finally start fresh. Emily shook her head before I even finished. This is home, Dan. I can't leave. Not with the little one still so young. Not with my parents here. You're asking me to uproot everything. I looked at her, really looked, and saw it. The way she clutched onto the familiar, even if it meant being stuck. The way she'd learned to live without me. The hardest truth was sitting right there between us. She didn't want a future that depended on me anymore, though we argued for weeks. I begged, reasoned, promised. She resisted, until finally the line was drawn. She'd stay with our youngest, and I'd take the older two. It wasn't the family unit I had dreamed of, but it was something. The night I left with Michael and Sarah, Emily stood on the porch, holding Lucas on her hip. She didn't cry. She didn't even wave. That image haunted me every time I boarded a plane back to work. I told myself I'd rebuild, that one day Lucas would join us, that Emily might see the life I was creating and change her mind. But in my gut, I knew that marriage was already cracked beyond repair. Still, I worked. I hustled. I saved. I built a life for the kids who came with me. They were thriving, learning languages, making friends, growing into stronger versions of themselves. That part gave me hope. And then the phone calls from home started again. This time, not from Emily. From Rachel. Dan, Mom's sick again. We don't have the money for the hospital. You've got to help. I sent it. Of course I did. Then another call. The house is freezing, the gas is off, and Mom's coughing. You've got to send more. I wired more. But the cracks in Emily's voice and the desperation in Rachel's demands. It was like two fires burning at opposite ends of me. I was pulled in every direction, and no matter how much I gave, it was never enough. One night, I sat alone in my apartment abroad, staring at a bank statement. My earnings were good, better than most men from our town could dream of. Yet I was broke, not because of rent or food or my kids' schooling, but because I was funding two households, one wife who didn't want me, and one sister who treated me like a never-ending ATM. That night, I made a decision. No more blind giving. No more trust without proof. I would still help my mother. She deserved that. But I was going to start looking closer, asking questions, and paying attention to where every dollar went. Because deep down, I already suspected the truth. And the truth was ugly. I suspected Rachel wasn't just bad with money. She was drinking it, wasting it, burning it up faster than I could wire it. And Emily? She had learned that keeping my son under her roof gave her leverage. If she didn't want to move, she could keep me hooked with guilt and legal obligations that I realized I was surrounded. On one side by a wife who saw me as a paycheck, on the other by a sister who saw me as a wallet. The only people I could truly trust were the children sleeping under my roof, and that realization changed me. For the first time in years, I wasn't just reacting. I was planning, watching, waiting, because if they wanted to treat me like some dumb workhorse, they were about to learn what happened when I stopped pulling the cart. The first real crack in Rachel's stories came one winter night. She called me, her voice shaky and dramatic. Dan, they cut the power. Mom's sitting here in the dark, shivering. If you don't send something tonight, she might not make it. My heart dropped. I pictured my mother, frail, sick, wrapped in a blanket while my sister sat there crying into the phone. Without a second thought, I wired the money. I even paid extra, just to be sure. The next morning, I called the utility company myself. I expected to hear, "Yes, your payment cleared, the account is active again." Instead, the woman on the line said something that froze me. "Sir, that account hasn't been disconnected. It's fully up to date." My hands went cold. Rachel had lied. Straight to my face. Straight to my heart. That's when I knew this wasn't about emergencies. It was about manipulation. Rachel had figured out that the fastest way to get cash out of me was to dangle mom's health over my head. And I had been falling for it every single time. But I didn't let her know what I'd learned. Not yet. I wanted to watch her, to see how far she'd push. And sure enough, she kept calling. Dan, we need money for mom's new medication. The doctor says it's urgent. This time, instead of wiring her cash, I asked for the prescription details. She got defensive. Don't you trust me? I'm the one here taking care of her while you're off in another country. I stayed calm. Rachel, just give me the name of the doctor and the pharmacy. I'll handle it directly. Silence. Then a sigh. Fine, I'll text it to you. She never did. I took matters into my own hands. I called mom's doctor and set up direct billing. Every test, every prescription, every hospital visit, I paid it straight to the source. That way I knew mom was cared for and no one could skim off the top. When Rachel realized she couldn't get her hands on that money anymore, her calls turned nastier. You don't understand the stress I'm under, Dan. I'm the one feeding her, bathing her, sitting with her. And you think you can just swoop in with your fancy bank transfers and act like the hero? Her words stung, but they didn't break me. I knew better now. I started keeping a folder, screenshots of every transfer, every receipt, every call log. If Rachel was going to keep playing games, I was going to build the kind of record she couldn't talk her way out of. Then came the gas bill. Another frantic call. They shut it off, Dan. Mom's coughing. The house is freezing. We're suffering here while you live it up overseas. That night, instead of wiring her cash, I logged onto the gas company's portal. Same story. The account was current, bills paid. And yet Rachel kept insisting, swearing she could see her own breath in the kitchen. I drove straight into the lie. Don't worry, Rachel, I said evenly. I'll call the company myself and get someone out there. If the gas is off, it must be a technical issue. Her voice faltered. No, don't do that. They'll just waste time. Better if you just send the money. That was the moment I felt the anger solidify into something sharper, resolve. My sister was exploiting both my mother's illness and my guilt. She wasn't just lazy or careless. She was dangerous. Because every dollar she stole was a dollar not going to the woman who actually needed it. And yet, I still didn't cut her off. Call it weakness, call it loyalty, call it guilt. I couldn't bring myself to shut her out completely. So instead, I played along. I sent smaller amounts, always marked and tracked. I asked pointed questions. I started cross-checking everything she said. The deeper I looked, the more I found. Liquor store charges, lottery tickets, late-night ATM withdrawals in amounts too round, too neat, to be coincidences. And every time I pieced it together, the knot in my chest tightened that I wasn't just supporting my sick mother. I was financing Rachel's spiral. And here's the cruel twist. Mom didn't know. She thought the lights went out because of billing errors. She thought the gas company was incompetent. She believed Rachel's stories because why wouldn't she? Rachel was right there in the house, playing the role of caregiver. Spinning lie after lie. That's when I realized. If I didn't take control soon, my mother's last years would be lived in darkness and cold, not because of money, but because of Rachel's greed. I made a vow. I was going to protect Mom. But to do that, I had to stop protecting Rachel. Once I realized Rachel's lies weren't accidents but a pattern, I tightened the leash. No more lump sums, no more urgent transfers. From then on, I handled everything directly. Mom's prescriptions went straight to the pharmacy, hospital visits billed directly to my account, utilities paid online with my name on the receipt. First, Rachel tried to play it off. Oh, that makes sense, Dan. Less stress for me. She even pretended to be relieved. But I knew better. A week later, she called in tears. The grocery store won't let me take food on credit anymore. We have nothing in the fridge. Mom hasn't eaten all day. I paused. Rachel, I'll order groceries right now. Delivery. What do you need? That's when her tone snapped. You don't trust me, do you? You think I'm some thief. You'd rather humiliate me in front of delivery guys than just send me the money like a normal brother. I kept my voice calm. I trust Mom's needs. And that's what I'm paying for. End of story. From then on, it was war. Not with fists or shouting matches, but with whispers. Rachel started poisoning the well. She told relatives that I'd abandoned Mom, that I was too busy playing rich guy overseas to come home and help. She twisted every payment I made into a weapon. Yeah, he sends money, but he makes me beg for it first. He wants me crawling. Soon, I started getting strange messages from cousins. Hey, is it true you stopped helping your mom? Rachel says you've cut her off. My blood boiled, but I refused to take the bait. Instead, I started sending weekly updates, not to Rachel, but directly to a small family group chat. Screenshots of bills paid, receipts from pharmacies, notes from mom's doctors. Nothing dramatic, just facts. Some of them stayed quiet. Others replied awkwardly with, "Thanks for sharing, Dan." But I knew Rachel was losing ground. The real breaking point came at a family gathering I couldn't attend in person. It was my cousin's wedding, and Rachel showed up loud and drunk, holding court at a table full of relatives. One of my friends was there and sent me a shaky video from his phone. In it, Rachel slurred, "You all think Dan's the hero? Please. He's sitting in some fancy apartment overseas while I wipe mom's mouth, clean up her mess, keep her alive. And what do I get? Nothing. Not a damn thing." The room was quiet, uncomfortable. Then someone asked, "Didn't he pay for the hospital bills last month?" Rachel exploded, waving her glass. "That's nothing. Pennies compared to what he owes this family. He's forgotten where he came from." Watching that video, I didn't feel anger. I felt clarity. Rachel wasn't just lying to me. She was rewriting the narrative for everyone else. If I didn't step in, one day even my own kids might hear her version of the story and believe I doubled down. Every time Rachel called me with a sob story, I wrote it down. Dates, times, what she claimed, what I later verified. I created a timeline that showed the truth. Payments made, services covered, and lies told. Meanwhile, I kept helping mom in every way I could. I called her directly every few days, sent little gifts. Even arranged for a nurse to check in on her once a week when Rachel claimed she couldn't manage. Mom's voice was always soft, apologetic, like she felt guilty for being caught in the middle. She never accused Rachel of anything, but sometimes I'd hear her whisper, "Thank you, Dan. I don't know what we'd do without you." Those words kept me going. They reminded me who I was really fighting for. Not Rachel, not the cousins, not the neighbors she poisoned with gossip, just mom. And yet, part of me was already planning for the future. I knew mom's health wouldn't last forever. When the time came, Rachel would make her move, on money, on reputation, maybe even on inheritance. I had to be ready, with more than just receipts. I needed a wall of proof so high she could never climb over it. I smiled through the phone calls, kept my voice even, and let Rachel believe she was winning. Because what she didn't know was that every lie she told was being logged, dated, and stored. A weapon I would use when the time was right. By the time spring rolled around, I was done playing defense. Rachel had turned her gossip into a full-time job, dragging my name through the mud with relatives, neighbors, even people at church. Meanwhile, I was the one paying every bill, covering every medical cost, and quietly keeping my mother alive. That's when I realized I didn't just need to survive Rachel's lies. I needed to build a wall of truth so solid that when the final fight came, she'd have nowhere to hide. The first step was opening a dedicated account. Not in my name alone, but labeled Mom's Care Fund. Every dollar I deposited went toward medical expenses or utilities, and every cent was traceable. No excuses, no gaps. Then I linked that account to automatic payments for the pharmacy, the clinic, and the utility companies. When Rachel called crying, "We need cash for groceries," I stopped her mid-sentence. "The card is in the drawer by the fridge. It's prepaid, only for essentials. Every purchase is tracked." Her reaction was instant fury. "You think you're some genius, don't you? Controlling everything from your fancy apartment while I do the real work." But here's the thing. I wasn't just thinking about today. I was thinking about the day Mom would be gone. Because I knew Rachel would come at me for inheritance, for sympathy, for whatever scraps she thought she could squeeze. And when that day came, I wasn't going to argue. I was going to drop a mountain of evidence right on her head. I started meeting with a lawyer during one of my trips back to the States. I brought him a binder. Yes, a literal binder, full of receipts, wire transfer logs, utility confirmations, even screenshots of Rachel's texts. The lawyer flipped through page after page, eyebrows raised. "Mr. Miller," he said, "if what you're telling me is true, your sister isn't just irresponsible. She's engaging in financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. In some states, that's a criminal charge." The words sank into me like a knife, and like relief at the same time. For years, Rachel had painted me as the villain. But in black and white legal terms, She was the one committing abuse. I didn't go straight to the police. Not yet. I wanted Rachel to dig her own hole deeper. So I also reached out to a social services advisor. They explained that if I ever needed to, I could request a review of Mom's care situation. If the records showed neglect, like unpaid utilities while I was sending money, Rachel could be flagged for investigation. That knowledge was power, and I used it quietly. Every time Rachel ranted, I listened and jotted notes. Every time she accused me of abandoning Mom, I calmly replied, "That's not what the receipts say." And every time I sent money, I made sure it left a digital footprint a mile long. The funny part? Rachel didn't realize I was documenting everything. She thought she was still running the show. She'd call me drunk at midnight, rambling about how I owed her for all the sacrifices she'd made. She'd throw in little threats. "One day, everyone's gonna know the truth about you, Dan." I'd smile at the phone, knowing the truth she bragged about was already shredded by my paperwork. Then came the night I decided to bait her. I told Rachel I'd set aside a small bonus fund for emergencies, money only she could access. I wanted to see what she'd do with it. Within 48 hours, the withdrawal started. First groceries, then gas. Then, like clockwork, liquor stores, scratch-off tickets, and cash machines. All tied neatly to her card. That was it. That was the proof I needed. Not just suspicion, not just gut feeling, but undeniable evidence. And yet, I didn't confront her. Not directly. I kept the calm act going. "Everything okay, Rachel? You've been using the emergency fund a lot." "Oh, that's just for Mom," she snapped. "You wouldn't understand. You're not here." I let her think she was clever. Because the more rope I gave her, the tighter the noose would be when the time came. Meanwhile, I doubled down on Mom's care. I scheduled her doctor's visits myself. I set up weekly grocery deliveries. I even arranged for a home health aide to stop by, paid directly, no middleman. The aide later told me quietly, "Your mom's doing okay, but your sister, well, she's not much help." Exactly what I already knew. By the time summer hit, my binder of evidence had doubled in size. Every page was another nail in Rachel's coffin. And every smile I gave her on the phone was another mask hiding the storm I was preparing to unleash. Because I knew the day was coming. The day Mom would pass, and Rachel would step forward, demanding her share. And when she did, she was going to find out that the only thing she'd inherited from me was the truth. The call came in the middle of the night. I was thousands of miles away, staring at the ceiling after a long day's work, when my phone lit up with Rachel's number. For once, her voice wasn't sharp or demanding. It was flat, drained. "Dan, Mom's gone." I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, staring into the dark. Even though I knew this day was coming, it still hit me like a freight train. My chest felt hollow, my throat tight. For a moment, Rachel and I were just two kids again, losing the one person who had held us together. But the moment didn't last. By the time I landed back home, the funeral was already being arranged. I told Rachel I'd cover every expense: casket, service, flowers, reception. No hesitation. If my mother was leaving this world, she was going to leave it with dignity. I didn't care what it cost, and for a brief moment, I thought Rachel might appreciate that. She didn't dot at the viewing. I stood near the front, greeting relatives who offered their condolences. Everyone said the same thing. "Your mom was such a kind soul. She always spoke proudly of you." It was bittersweet, hearing those words while looking at her still face in the casket. Then Rachel made her entrance. Loud, overdressed, with a drink in her hand that she tried to pass off as soda. She went from guest to guest, whispering, gesturing toward me. I could see the way people's expressions shifted after she spoke to them. Eyes narrowing, lips pursing. Finally, during the eulogy, when the pastor invited family members to share, Rachel stumbled up to the podium. She gripped the microphone with both hands and let loose. "You all think my brother is this great son, flying in from his fancy life overseas. But where was he when Mom needed him most? Where was he when the lights went out, when the house was freezing, when the cupboards were bare? He left it all on me." Me. Her voice cracked, though whether from emotion or alcohol, no one could tell. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I felt every eye turned toward me that I didn't move, didn't speak. Because I knew if I defended myself in that moment, it would look like I was attacking her grief. And Mom deserved better than that kind of spectacle. But inside, my blood was boiling. Rachel wasn't just lying in private anymore. She was rewriting my mother's legacy, poisoning her farewell with venom aimed at me. After the service, I paid the funeral director in full. No delays, no drama. Meanwhile, Rachel cornered relatives, muttering about how Dan's only doing this to look good, and he's sitting on piles of money while I'm left with nothing. It got worse at the reception. As people sat with coffee and sandwiches, Rachel raised her voice again. When do we talk about inheritance, huh? Mom's house, mom's things. Dan thinks he gets to decide everything. But I've been the one here. I deserve my share. The room went silent. Forks clinked on plates. I stood up slowly, every eye watching. I didn't shout. I didn't match her chaos. I just said one thing. Everything Mom left will be handled legally. With records. With proof. Nothing will be decided here. Today, at her funeral. Rachel's face twisted, but she had no comeback. She stormed out, muttering curses under her breath that I sat back down, my hands trembling under the table. Not from fear. No, from the effort it took to hold myself together. Because in that moment, I realized something crucial. Rachel wasn't just greedy. She was desperate. And desperate people make mistakes. That was my advantage, that I had years of documentation, a binder thick enough to crush every lie she'd ever told. And when she inevitably came for me, whether for money, property, or reputation, I wasn't going to argue. I was going to bury her in the truth. For now, though, I let her walk out. Let her think she'd rattled me. Because the real fight wasn't at the funeral. It was coming later. And I was ready for it. The funeral was barely over before Rachel shifted gears. For one short week, she kept quiet, maybe waiting to see if I'd hand her something out of guilt. When I didn't, the late-night calls started again. The first one came at 2 a.m. Dan, listen. Mom would have wanted me to be taken care of. I've given up everything for her. You owe me. I gritted my teeth. Rachel, I covered every expense for Mom. Her care, her funeral, everything. She laughed, bitter and sharp. That was for her. What about me? You think I can just live off scraps while you sit overseas with your big paycheck? Click. I hung up. The next day, she wasn't calling. She was texting. Paragraphs at a time. Demands dressed up as guilt trips. Mom always said you should look out for me. If you don't help, I'll have no choice but to tell the whole family how you abandoned us. That last line made me pause. Not because I was scared, but because I realized Rachel was walking straight into my trap. I texted back one sentence. Do what you need to do. I'll do the same. That evening, she called again, her voice sharp with rage. Don't threaten me, Dan. You think you're so smart with your receipts and your little bank accounts. But everyone knows I was the one here with Mom, not you. This time, I didn't hang up. I opened the folder on my desk, pulled out a stack of documents, and spoke evenly. Rachel, I have every bill paid, every receipt, every prescription order, and even video logs from the home nurse. If you want to start telling people stories, I'll make sure they see the real one. For once, she was silent. I let the silence hang, then added, I also have proof of how you used the emergency fund. Liquor stores, lottery tickets, ATM withdrawals. If you want to test me, I'll put it all in front of the lawyer tomorrow. The sound that came out of her mouth wasn't anger. It was panic, masked in a laugh. You wouldn't dare. You'd ruin your own family's name. I leaned back in my chair, calm as ever. The only one ruining this family's name is you. From that night forward, Rachel switched tactics. When threats didn't work, she tried pity. Dan, I'm just lost without Mom. I don't know how to live anymore. Please, just a little help. But I didn't budge. Instead of money, I sent her a flyer for a local job fair. She didn't reply. A week later, she tried rage again, cornering me in front of relatives during a Sunday dinner. So, Dan, when are you going to stop being selfish and actually share what you've got? Mom wouldn't want you hoarding everything. Everyone froze, forks halfway to their mouths. I stayed calm, reached into my jacket, and pulled out a neatly folded copy of the account summary. Actually, Rachel, Mom's estate is being handled legally. Every cent accounted for. And as for me hoarding, here's a breakdown of the last 3 years of expenses. You're welcome to review it. I slid the paper across the table. She didn't touch it. Her face went pale. I turned to the relatives and said, if anyone has questions about what I've done for Mom, I'll gladly show you the records. No one spoke. They didn't need to. The look on Rachel's face told them everything. After dinner, an aunt quietly pulled me aside. Dan, we didn't know. We thought Rachel was taking care of things. I nodded. That's what she wanted you to believe. Walking out of that house, binder under my arm, I felt something shift. For the first time in years, Rachel wasn't the one controlling the narrative. I was, but I knew her well enough to realize this wasn't over. Rachel was cornered, and cornered people fight dirty. The real explosion was still coming. And when it did, I was going to be ready. Rachel didn't come alone the next time. She showed up on Mom's porch with Tom planted beside her like a bored bodyguard and the boys, Ethan and Jacob, hovering in hoodies. It was late afternoon, sky the color of wet cardboard. And I was inside with a clipboard doing an inventory for the estate, photos of every item, serial numbers where there were any, a witness from the funeral home standing by. All by the book. Rachel pounded the door. Open up, Dan. Family first. I cracked it. Tom stared at the floor. The boys shifted, eyes flicking between me and their mother. We're here to get Mom's jewelry and the wedding china, Rachel announced, shouldering past the threshold like it already belonged to her. I need to sell a few things to cover, funeral costs. I paid every funeral cost, I said softly, stepping into her path. And this house, along with its contents, is now part of probate. Nothing leaves without a signed release from the estate attorney. She laughed, loud and brittle. Probate? What are you, a TV lawyer? Jacob piped up, voice cracking. Uncle Dan, Mom said Grandma wanted her to have the rings. I looked at him, not Rachel. If there's a note or a will that says that, we'll follow it to the letter. You'll see me honor it with my own hands. But until then, we don't touch a thing. Rachel rolled her eyes. Fine. Tom, get the china. Tom didn't move. He glanced at me, then at Ethan, who suddenly found the porch railing fascinating. For a beat, the only sound was the wind whistling through the maple out front. Guys, I said to the boys, none of this is on you. If you need school supplies or groceries, call me directly. I'll help. But today isn't about grabbing boxes. It's about respecting your grandmother. Rachel's jaw tightened. You think you can buy everyone with your nice guy act? He abandoned us, she told the kids, stabbing a finger at me. He abandoned your grandma. I let the blow pass. To the boys I said, I talk to your grandma every week. Ask the home nurse. Ask the pharmacy. Ask anyone but Facebook. That hit the right nerve. Rachel's face flushed. You want Facebook? Fine. She whipped out her phone and, right there on the porch, recorded herself on live. Trembling voice, tragic angle. My brother locked me out of my own mother's house. He's hiding the valuables. I raised a hand, but not to stop her. To point at the small sign I'd taped to the window that morning, property under probate. All access recorded. The camera caught it perfectly. She stopped streaming. Here's what happens next, I said. Tomorrow, the estate attorney sets the first meeting. You'll be there. We'll read Mom's will and inventory everything. You'll have your say, in front of someone who can put a stamp on it. Tom swallowed. Maybe that's best. For the first time all day, Rachel looked truly alone. She spun on her heel, dragging the kids down the steps. Halfway to the car, she turned and shouted, You think paperwork makes you right? Watch me. I didn't answer. I finished the inventory, locked the door, and drove straight to the attorney's office to drop off copies of the photos. No speeches, no victory lap, just a chain of custody no one could argue with. That night the smear campaign lit up. Rachel posted a collage, a photo of Mom's hands, a black ribbon, and a caption about greedy sons. Comments from her friends poured in, strangers calling me a thief. I didn't take the bait. I sent my aunt and uncle a quiet email with the probate notice, the funeral invoice stamped paid, and the appointment time for tomorrow. No hashtags, no theatrics, just facts. An hour later, my phone buzzed. Ethan, can we talk? We met at the coffee shop near the bus station. He looked older than 15 should look. Mom says you're taking everything, he muttered. I'm taking responsibility, I said, which includes making sure she gets exactly what the law says she gets. No more, no less. And making sure you and Jacob have what you need for school. That's non-negotiable. He nodded, chewing his lip. Did Grandma really, Was it really that bad at the house? I didn't sell out his mother. I didn't need to. Grandma loved you. She deserved heat, food, and dignity. That's all I'll say. He stared into his cup. Mom drinks a lot. It came out like a secret he'd been carrying too long. I know, I said. It's not your job to fix it. If you ever feel unsafe, you call me. Or you call this number. I slid him a card for a youth support line and the contact for the home health aide who knew the situation. Quiet safety nets, ready if he reached. Back home, I found the first real crack in Rachel's endgame. At the house earlier, I'd photographed a jewelry box, empty except for a receipt. A pawn slip, dated last month, in Rachel's name. Item, gold locket. Engraved I had a photo of Mom wearing that locket at my graduation, time-stamped and clear as day. Side by side, they told a story no caption could twist. I added the pawn slip to the binder, BY morning. Rachel had a new tactic. Tom texted, asking for an advance on his share to fix their car. I replied with the estate attorney's number. 5 minutes later, Rachel sent a single line. You'll regret this, maybe. But regret wasn't the point. The point was momentum. Steady, legal, clinical momentum. The attorney's conference room. Rachel arrived late, with oversized sunglasses and a rehearsed sigh. The boys sat in the hall with a tablet. Tom hovered by the door. The attorney read the will. Simple, painfully simple. Proceeds split equally. Personal effects distributed by mutual agreement or sold if there was no agreement. Rachel perked up at equally, then bristled at mutual. She demanded Mom's rings on the spot. The attorney folded his hands. Do you both agree? I don't agree to removing anything until the inventory is complete, I said, sliding over the photos and the pawn slip. Additionally, one locket is already gone. Sold last month. Rachel shot to her feet. You're calling me a thief? I'm letting the paper speak. I kept my voice even. And I'm requesting that all items of value be placed in the attorney's safe until distribution. For everyone's protection. Tom sank back into his chair. The attorney nodded. Sensible. Rachel's mouth opened, closed. For the first time, she understood the terrain had shifted. This wasn't a porch argument or a Facebook Live. This was a room where facts made weather, and she'd shown up without an umbrella. When the meeting adjourned, she brushed past me in the hall. You think you won, she hissed. You haven't seen me fight. I met her eyes. Then fight where it counts. The conference room looked harmless. Gray carpet, glass table, a carafe of water sweating onto a coaster. But I'd built it into an arena. The estate attorney sat at the head, a paralegal to his right, and beside her a quiet woman from Adult Protective Services. Rachel didn't notice until it was too late. Tom took a chair by the wall. Rachel marched in last, jangling bracelets, chin high like she'd just won something. Let's keep this brief, she said, dropping into the chair across from me. I have kids to feed. You will, I said, after we settle facts. The attorney started with routine items, inventory status, appraisal appointments, deadlines. Rachel slouched, bored. Then he gestured to me. Mr. Miller has documents relevant to distribution. I slid the binder forward. Not with a slam, just a steady push. The cover read Maggie Miller. Care and expenses, verification. Tabs in red, medical, utilities, direct aid, emergency card, pawn activity. Rachel snorted. Scrapbook. I opened to utilities. Neat rows of statements, each stamped paid, all tied to my bank. You told family the lights were off for months, I said quietly. They weren't. I paid them. Here's the gas record too. She waved a hand. Glitches happen. Medical was next. Pharmacy refills, hospital invoices, the home nurse's weekly reports. I didn't look at Rachel. I looked at the attorney and the APS rep, letting them read. The nurse's notes were careful, professional. Client appears clean and fed on visits when deliveries arrive. Daughter often absent or resting. A sticky weight settled over the table. Rachel rolled her eyes. So you kept receipts. Congratulations. That doesn't mean Mom wasn't suffering while you were off playing expat. I flipped to emergency card. The spreadsheet I'd built was cold and merciless. Dates, times, vendor names. Groceries and pharmacy entries lined up with delivery confirmations. Then the other column, the one Rachel didn't expect to see anyone notice. Late-night withdrawals and liquor stores. The paralegal's pen stopped moving. What does my shopping have to do with Mom? Rachel snapped. It's the card labeled for Mom, I said. Every dollar drawn from that fund was supposed to be used for her care. Instead, the attorney raised a palm. Let's stay factual. He turned to the APS rep. Ms. Ellis. The woman had said nothing until now. She looked at Rachel with the same calm you use to look at a storm radar. Ms. Miller, We're obligated to review potential financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. The bank activity Mr. Miller preserved, combined with the nurse's notes and the utilities record, meets the threshold for inquiry. Rachel's laugh cracked. Exploitation? Of my own mother. Ms. Ellis didn't blink. The law looks at the outcome, not sentiment. Color climbed Rachel's neck. He's making this up. I slid the last tab forward. Pawn activity. The photo of mom in the gold locket at my graduation, time-stamped 11 years ago. Next to it, the pawn slip in Rachel's name from last month. Item description matched the engraving. Tom exhaled a wordless "oh." Even he couldn't look at her. Rachel slammed her palm on the table. Mom gave me that locket. She said, then she would have written it down, I said. She didn't. And even if she had, you sell it after her death, not before. The room went very still. Outside, the hallway hum faded. Inside, the only sound was the attorney turning a page. He cleared his throat. Given these materials, I'm placing all items of value, including jewelry, into firm custody until distribution. Funds will be reconciled against documented care expenses before any cash disbursement. Ms. Miller, you'll receive notice regarding APS. Cooperate fully. Rachel stood so fast her chair scraped. This is a setup. He's been plotting to make me look like a monster. I met her eyes for the first time. You did that work yourself. She pointed at me, shaking. You abandoned Mom. You abandoned us. You think pieces of paper change that? I thought of every sleepless night wiring money. Every call with Mom, where she sounded small and tired, the way her voice lightened when the nurse squared away her meds. I thought of the boys, of Ethan rolling that admission around his tongue like broken glass. Mom drinks a lot. No, I said. The paper doesn't change the past. It protects the future. Rachel's mouth opened, closed. She looked to Tom for backup, but Tom stayed welded to his chair, eyes on the carpet. She cursed under her breath and stormed out, sunglasses back on like armor, silence stretched. The attorney gathered the documents carefully. Mr. Miller, we'll keep copies and proceed with inventory transfer today. Ms. Ellis will contact you both regarding the inquiry. I nodded and stood. My hands were steady now. Out in the hall, Ethan and Jacob sat side by side on a bench. A game paused between them. Rachel's footsteps echoed down the corridor and out of the building. The boys looked at me, not sure which script to read from. I crouched to their level. 2 things, I said. 1, you're not responsible for any of this. 2, if anyone asks you to lie about money or grandma, you tell the truth or you call me. Understood. They nodded. Ethan fast, Jacob after a beat. Ethan's eyes were red. Are we in trouble? Not with me. I slid them a plain envelope. Bus passes, grocery vouchers the attorney suggested for minors in contested estates, and a note with my number and Ms. Ellis's. Use these if you need them. No one has to know. On my way to the elevator, Tom caught up. He looked 10 years older than he had yesterday. Dan, I didn't know about the locket. His voice was small. I can try to keep things calm at home. Keep the boys safe, I said. That's all I care about. Outside, the afternoon had sharpened into a brittle blue sky. I stood on the steps and let the cold bite through my coat, the kind of clean pain that reminds you you're alive. My phone buzzed, another blast of Rachel's posts, people calling me names I'd heard before. I archived them all into a folder called Noise. Then I opened a new note and wrote the only 3 lines that mattered now. Inventory. Transferred to attorney. APS review initiated. Truth on record, the revenge wasn't a speech or a spectacle. It was this, turning chaos into a ledger, lies into exhibits, cruelty into consequences. For the first time since this war started, I felt something that didn't feel like rage or grief, that I felt the floor stop moving. In the end, Rachel's voice faded into the background. The Facebook rants slowed down, the late-night calls stopped, and even her friends eventually lost interest in the sob story she had been selling. Lies have an expiration date, and hers had finally spoiled. Meanwhile, my life took on a rhythm I hadn't felt in years. My mornings were filled with the sound of my kids rushing for school, backpacks thumping against the door. Evenings were dinners together, stories shared around the table, laughter that came easily. For once, my home didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt like a future. I poured everything into my children. Ethan and Jacob eventually started reaching out on their own, quietly at first, questions about school, college, even jobs. They weren't looking for handouts. They were looking for stability, for someone who wouldn't let them down. And I was determined to be that person. Rachel? She stayed in the same cycle. Complaints, excuses, empty bottles. She chose that path. I chose mine. And the difference couldn't have been clearer, that I won't lie. Sometimes the anger still flares. I think about how she treated Mom, about the things she said at the funeral, about the pawn slip with the locket. But then I look at my kids thriving, building lives in a new country, and I realize something important. My real revenge isn't destroying her. It's proving her wrong. She said I abandoned my family. But I didn't. I built one. A stronger one. A better one. And every success, every smile, every achievement my kids make is a reminder that I won the war without ever needing to throw a punch. That's where I leave this story. Not in bitterness, not in hate, but in victory. Because happiness is the sharpest weapon you can wield against people who tried to drag you down. And I'm happier than I've ever been. If you've stuck with me through this story, thank you. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss more stories like this. Don't forget to like the video and leave a comment down below. Tell me, did I do the right thing cutting Rachel off for good? What would you have done in my place?